All right, guys, I show that we are live and recording. This is really great.
This is cool.
Yay.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Man, thanks for joining in. This is, and taking your lunchtime to do this.
Yeah,
So
it's
this
our
is
way of
Go ahead,
kind of
Ben.
coming together as a team, dealing with difficult moments as a team, and using it as an opportunity to share with the community.
These are times of high tension and anxiety for our kids. We as a team here at New Minds have been discussing the tragic events that happened in the city of Allen, Texas recently, and it hits really close to home for us for many reasons. One is our headquarters is very close to Allen, and many of us live in the vicinity of where the tragic events happened. Another is Allen ISD is one of our valued partners with New Minds. We know many of the teachers and the administration and the students in that school district, and we're parents ourselves. We either have or we have had kids who are in the public school system right now, and we've been fielding questions from our own kids about the events that happened and trying to help them process it and make sense of it. So, what we thought might be beneficial would be to have a quick conversation here, talk about how we're all affected by events like this, and um, offer some strategies to have these conversations, help our kids, help our students. We're having the conversations as a team ourselves. And Justin, I know that you had brought this up in a team meeting recently based on a conversation that you had with your daughter. Would you like to share a little bit about how that went?
No, yeah, sure. And actually, it's a perfect opportunity to share like the conversation that we had, but also at the same time, when we think about social media and we think about New Minds, we're putting out great content and awesome videos, and we're all smiling. This is one of those things that we were having a conversation as a team, like you mentioned, Janet. It was a week or so ago. We're talking about the tragedy that happened inside of Allen, and I had brought into the conversation that the day after, my daughters each were met with their counselor. So their counselor came into the classroom, and they shared what had happened as far as the tragedy goes. And my kids are in their formative years, of course, and so that night was probably one of the hardest conversations we've ever had as a family. Yes, they're aware of different things that had happened in other locations, but this one was close to home. They had never been approached by the counselor in this capacity. So here we are, like we're being raw and we're taking off the cover and we're saying like, what the heck do you do? A lot of times we put ourselves out there like, guys, let me show you all the right tools and tips and tricks. And this is one where nothing in my tool belt helped. And so my wife and I were talking with our two daughters and sharing, well, you try to be the best that you can be. And like, but again, it just felt like pith. It was just things that I was throwing out there in order to kind of satiate. And I don't even know, like maybe even try to repress it, like just ignore it. Maybe it just goes away. And when I brought that up in the context of our team meeting, I don't know, we all had such great insights that poof, the light bulb went off. I think for all of us simultaneously, it's like, let's have this conversation publicly, because we don't have all the answers, but we do have some strategies and we have some things to bring to the table. And so, Ben, you had shared a few things that were super helpful as far as like, the physiology, the nervous system. So that's what this is about. This is about us sharing that information with parents and being like, man, these are some tools that you can go use because we're trying them out for ourselves. We want to know how they work for you. We want to know how, like, what you use. So I'm sorry. Yeah, keep going. Ben, Garrett, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that it's just like so personal for all of us, especially you, Justin, because you're the one amongst us with the younger kids. And it's difficult to process for anyone, but for younger kids too, or especially, like there's just a lot going through all their worldview, their understanding of reality, like all that stuff
Right.
is getting tested there. So first and foremost, like you said, is we just have to understand the physiology of a stressful event like that. And of course, we're reflecting specifically on the incident in Allen, Texas, but this could be any stressful event in your community or your family. It's going to be the same. Number one is to understand that there's a baseline effect on our bodies, on our physiology, on our nervous system. We have incredible bodies that respond to the environment to keep us alive. They have kept us alive on planet Earth for a very long time. But one of the things that happens in stressful situations is there's a release of cortisol and adrenaline. And this is our body's way of putting ourselves into a different phase or mode to increase our chances of survival over the short term. So that's why it's called fight or flight, right? And so what's beautiful about fight or flight is we get this little burst of adrenaline for a while. So some of our systems are enhanced, but there's a price we pay for that. And that is that during that time, other systems, including cognitive functions and the ability to process things in our prefrontal cortex, those things are actually dampened. And then if it's a prolonged stress over the course of not even days, but even hours, but we're in a situation where there's stress for days, there's some chronic effects of high stress on the body. And it can affect the ability to sleep, the ability to digest food, the ability to process clearly. It affects memory. So that's one of the things we want to share is just this baseline. Give your kids lots of grace about processing stressful moments and when bad things happen, because step one is just, okay, you have to kind of reset the whole nervous system to even get to a place where you can process clearly. And, we're keeping it short here today, but the one tool I want to leave is just the most basic. We're blessed with the ability to regulate our own nervous system with the breath. And so this is just how we're wired, that when our exhale extends a little bit longer than our inhale, we're down regulating that nervous system. And there's so much science to back this now, that all that adrenaline and cortisol I was just talking about, we can literally manage that just with our breath. So if you're a parent or if you're a teacher watching this, even a very simple practice is just have your child or your students count their inhale and their exhale and just make the exhale a little bit longer. One good combination is 4-7. So in other words, inhale for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 7. And as the adult or the teacher, you can do the counts out loud. Older kids can do this in their own head. And just even a few rounds of that will get you back to that baseline. And when it's a big event, it's going to take more than one short breathing session. But if that's a practice, maybe you can work in to breakfast time. Maybe that's a practice you can work into bedtime or anytime throughout the day. That's the good news, is that we do have tools available at the nervous system level to begin to manage that stressor.
Man, Ben, I remember too when my kids were really little, there was that fist of 5 idea, and it was like, think about your brain, and this is your amygdala, right? This is all the fight or flight you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you wrap those cognitive processes on top of it. But if your amygdala is all getting excited, you flip your lid, right?
Everything's open. Yeah.
And it's just, man, you really spoke to me, because I mentioned earlier that when I was trying to talk to my kids about the tragedy, and like they're asking me literally, Dad, what do I do? Right? Provide some kind of meaning. It didn't really matter what I said, because I was trying to bring this cognitive approach. I was trying to give them a framework to how to think about it, or how to justify it, or how to, process it. But they weren't there. They weren't in that spot.
Yeah.
I hadn't given them a chance to breathe. And now I'm just shoulda, woulda, coulda. But looking back on it, I can see that now. I can almost see like their reaction was like, that doesn't make any sense, Dad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Man.
It's not a moment that we can fix with logic. And like you were mentioning your conversation and for this recent, it just felt like, I think you used the word trite, like what you were saying just felt like,
Yeah,
they're just words. And yeah, that's kind of, I think that's you feeling into this, that, wow, there's something else needed here. It's just like at a basic level. And if you're a parent, we know the power of just simple hugs, touch, the release of oxytocin, that's a counteractive to cortisol, and eye contact. And we know that we know the power of self-touch even too. So even have kids give themselves a little bear hug and squeeze, like things like this that sound just kind of fun and cheesy are actually really powerful.
True.
And I'll say, like, as Marissa, as a teacher, like, a lot of times you just want to hug the kid.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of things that teachers have their hands tied on. They can't do that.
Yeah.
To me, it's very insightful to think about how being able to hug yourself has that same process. And
it's true. Yeah, that's true. Teachers have, we have some rules to follow in school and protocols and doing what's appropriate for our kids. Sometimes we have to be creative with that, like you said. And if we can't do one thing, then we can certainly teach ways for self-care in that respect. I think also, Ben, when you were talking, it reminded me that I in situations like this, our kids look to us because we're supposed to have all the answers, and we don't have all the answers. And I think that's a pivotal moment for a child to see a parent or a teacher as not having the solution to something, as being just as confused or upset or hurt as the child is. But it's not necessarily a negative moment. It's a moment to share that we are all humans and we all have reactions to things when bad things happen, and that we are here for each other. We're here to help each other. We may not be able to solve it, but we certainly can listen and understand and take steps to bring understanding or to bring comfort to that moment and to move forward. So, the best advice I have for parents and for teachers is, you guys are a team for that child. And when your child, if you're a parent listening today and your child is struggling with understanding some of these things, and maybe they're asking questions at school that can't be answered, teachers reach out to those parents and say, hey, I noticed that your child is upset. Parents reach out to those teachers, let them know what's happening at home. If your child is struggling with some of these issues, maybe they're not sleeping, maybe they're having trouble eating, like you said, Ben, because of adrenaline issues, cortisone in the body. Kids come to school and with stomach aches or headaches sometimes because of all that stress that they're carrying. Let those teachers know so they're aware of that. Because all of those things can affect your child's, not only performance in school, but just their overall well-being at school. Just keep that door of communication open, teachers and parents, because again, you're collaborating for the advocacy of that child, and they need you, and they need everybody to work together for their benefit.
And Marissa, you had some really beautiful guidance too that I wanted to touch on again just for a moment, and that is just holding space for the kid,
yes,
their feelings, and reassuring them that whatever it is that they're feeling in that moment, anxiety, sadness, confusion, that's okay.
Yes.
And as you shared, if you as a parent are feeling the same way, it's actually healthy to share with them, you know what, I'm confused too.
Absolutely.
I'm really saddened about this too. Let's walk through it together.
Yes.
And holding that space so that the kid can experience that emotion. And to your point too, Justin, giving them that opportunity to do that and doing some of that co-regulation with them, which I know, Ben, you have some really great little tips and strategies for that. But let's work through this together, and help them get to a spot where you can address some of the cognitive stuff as well. So really, some really great advice, you guys.
Exactly. Holding space is so important, because you never, depending on the age of the child, really any child, you never know when those questions are going to bubble up. At the dinner table, before bed, riding in the car, when the moment strikes, you want them to be able to ask that question and to feel safe in asking that question, and to feel a sense of security that it's okay to ask these kind of questions. I'm thinking of writing. I remember writing notes to my kids in their lunch boxes when I knew that they were having a difficult day or a difficult situation they were dealing with, just to let them know I'm thinking about you. And just little things like that, like you were talking about, Ben, also with just give yourself a hug, and just those small things that bring comfort to the moment of it's okay to ask these kind of questions. It's okay not to have all the answers to them, and we're all here to work together through this.
And then once you do get to that point, maybe where the nervous system is a bit more regulated and there is calm, there's a little bit of just cognitive clarity, then of course we are the adults and we are supposed to help them with those existential questions. And
Sure.
Yes.
we're not here to say we have the ultimate answers, but I think we do have some strategies and ideas.
Yes.
And
I've always loved that too, because I've heard it called the surrogate prefrontal medial cortex.
yeah.
Fancy way of saying this is the stuff that regulates all of ours, and our kids don't have it all the way grown yet. And
Yeah.
so we get a chance to be a surrogate for them and kind of help them think through that.
Yeah, exactly. So there's one mental tool, I guess you might call it a mindset tool, that I like to use, and inspired by Mr. Rogers, actually. So there's this concept called the law of polarity, and the idea is that every situation, to the degree that there's something bad about it, there's good to be found, and vice versa. And we can consciously choose where to put our focus. So in a situation like this, something bad has happened. Of course, we know the route the news media takes. We know the route social media tends to take, what they decide to focus on. We can counteract that by consciously deciding, like, well, what good can we focus on? And the Mr. Rogers references, we were talking about it before we went live. Marissa brought it up. And did you ever find the exact quote? Basically,
I did.
he talks about like, look for the helpers.
Yes.
When there's a tragedy, look for the helpers. And that's instant. You're focusing on that positive, and what you focus on grows. We know that. So this is one kind of cognitive tool, more like a mindset tool. Another one, Justin, that we've used for years when we train teachers or kids is this concept of locus of control.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And what's fascinating is we're looking at this like you said, the amygdala's calm down. They can begin to make some meaning. And so you're saving space, like Janet mentioned, for them to be able to do that. So what are some things that we can do in order to help them there? And one thing you find is that when you feel like you're not in control of something, that's where you begin to spiral. That's where you begin to ruminate. That's where it's like, there's nothing I can do about this. And so it's really important to clarify that we're not trying to repress anything. We're not trying to say that this tragedy was not a tragedy, because you have saved that space for them to make that meaning. But if you look at it and you say, okay, so what do you know about the situation, and what do you have control over versus what you don't have control over? Now, in the context of working with a kid, I like to think about it as far as a good example is like whenever you're working on like mathematics. And I know it seems like a really kind of a silly analogy, but let me share it real fast and let's see how we apply it back to this tragedy. So when a kid's working on mathematics, you'll hear a lot of times kids say like, well, I'm just not a math person. And that's a really tough one, right? Because are you or are you not a math person per se? Or do you have that ability to work on it like you struggle? Now, I'm going to say that certain people have like a certain ability or certain acumen that's stronger than others. But if we think about this as far as what do we have control over and what they can work on, that helps you begin to feel like you have some balance that you can bring into the equation. So again, I'm using like a school example because that might be a nice dip your toe in it kind of conversation piece. But in the sake of this tragedy, I remember even my own daughter was like, well, what can I do? What can we do? And again, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I didn't have a good response. Like at the time, I was trying to approach it very cognitively, and I'm saying, well, okay, you can just be a good person. And my kids are at that age now where they're starting to call my bluff. And they called it. They were like,
yeah,
well, how can me being a better person stop this from happening?
Yeah, right.
And that's where you can begin to insert like, well, what do you have control over the situation? And at the same time, it's also equally difficult, but recognize what you don't have control over.
Yeah.
You don't have control over those person's actions, but you do have control over, like, again, back what you said, the perspective that you take.
Mm-hmm.
Do you look for the sensationalism, or do you look for the helper?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, and I love how you're being vulnerable about it too, Justin, as a parent. Like you, in that moment, you were just doing what you had to do on the spot,
Right.
on the fly. But now, in reflection, you realize that you are in a cognitive place, and because it's hard for us too, because everything we described about the nervous system is happening to us too.
Oh
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And as a
Yeah.
parent, you know your kids. I mean, you know your own children. Offer them different ways of learning through things that are bad that happen. You know, some learning through practical avenues, learning through empathetic avenues, learning through um, action items that they can participate in, that are age appropriate. You know, certainly look for those things to guide your child into having something that they can control, that they feel empowered to support.
Yeah, yeah. And one more thing I would add too, if your child is a reader, if your students are readers,
Mm,
the power of bibliotherapy, like we've done
yes.
workshops on that. And if there's sometimes that's a way to talk about a situation that's just enough steps removed that you
Mhm.
can have like a really meaningful conversation, and then the connection is also right there.
Yes. There are a lot of really great children's books that deal with tragedies that
And
I've found over the years. Definitely.
and maybe we can drop a couple in the comments, or any listeners.
Sure.
Any
Yeah.
listeners, if you're watching this, we'd love your list too.
And I know we're at time for what we said, and actually that's a really great way to wrap it up, because we want to make this into a conversation. So whether people are tuning in live or watching it later, like, what are some things that you use? What are some resources that you lean into? I'll find the reference that I had to the Fist of Five, and I'll throw it into the comments as well. Right, like how to
Yeah.
cool down the amygdala, for older
Yeah.
kids, and thinking about that kind of
Mhm.
idea.
Mhm.
But I love the fact that even through this conversation, guys, we've leaned into this hard stuff.
Mm.
And we're not here saying like, here's what you have to go do, but instead here are some things that work. And Ben, thank you for bringing that framework of like cooling ourselves down first, and then
And
once
Ben,
in that
tonight,
space. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, go ahead, Janet.
yeah, tonight you're actually offering a free workshop in partnership with Sang, supporting the emotional needs of the gifted at 6 p.m. Central, on utilizing the breath to
Yeah.
calm the central nervous system. So you're offering practical breath-based strategies that any adult or kid can use.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about it. What I did for that one is I literally made it almost like a diagnostic, like, hey, I want more focus. Okay, try this. I need to calm down. Try this. I even have one to lighten it up a little bit. I even have Dr. Andrew Huberman's new cure for the hiccups.
Oh, cool.
So, and everyone who participates will get a little reference chart with all those tools. But yeah, are you able to put a link to that in either the comments, Janet, or maybe even I
Yes.
can put it up here?
Yeah, I just put it in the comments. There's a link to sign up, and it's free. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, and so click the link, sign up, 6 p.m. Central tonight for something that's accessible to everybody, which is our breath as a great way to reduce stress and anxiety.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. And it looks like we just got a comment. I think it might be from one of us, Marissa, on a book.
Yes,
cool.
that's me.
Yeah. And this is one I'm assuming that was, spurred by September 11th, way back.
Yes. I actually had just started teaching. I had my second child. I just started teaching fourth grade, coming down from high school. And I was a teacher that was added to this grade level. I had not planned on teaching at this time. I had my second baby at home. I was planning to stay home for a while. They needed an emergency teacher. This is how I came to my district that I was at for so long. So I stepped into this fourth grade classroom 5 days before September 11th. So these kids and I were brand new to each other, and we went through that together. And this
Wow.
book was amazing. This book is written by elementary school students, and it's a wonderful little book.
Nice. And I can't wait to get even more books from New Minds community,
Yes.
you know, and people watching this. Okay, guys, this has been a pleasure. I'm glad that we decided to kind of take our internal discussion and share it with the world.
Yeah.
And hopefully bring them some insights and some tools that'll be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we
Thank
hope it
you,
helps,
guys.
and we hope that if they know someone who can benefit from hearing these words too, they forward it and share it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have we have a whole new series of webinars coming, so stay tuned for the New Minds. We call them Numinars, okay? Watch
working
for the
on the branding.
upcoming
Exactly.
schedule of Numinars that will be providing you right here on this channel. Maybe we'll do some on YouTube, but it's part of our offering to you.
All right, guys. Well, hey,
everybody
thanks
for
again.
joining
Appreciate
us.
it.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Our love and support to Alan. We're
Yes.
thinking about you.
Yeah, absolutely.